Hi, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to the second part of my conversation with Linda Casey. I'm so excited to be continuing our chat, Linda. So, Linda has been a strategic planner her entire career, starting overseas. She was a planner over at J. Walter Thompson at the juncture where planning was being exported from the UK and going all around the world. Linda might be the only British trained Mandarin speaking American white chick planner that's out there, but I could be wrong. And I'm really happy to chat with her today. Linda has also spent time at agencies Goodby as well as Wieden and Kennedy. Currently, Linda is a senior strategic insights professional at Reality Check, a human insights consultancy where she advises Fortune 500 brands and clients. Linda, I'm so glad to be talking to you again.
It's always good.
So I really enjoyed our last conversation talking about planning and the history of planning and what makes for a good planner. I'd love to talk a little bit more now about how do we bring that spirit of planning into the marketing world and continue to infuse it, right? How does one bring more planningness into the marketing process? I mean, because I think behind my question is this notion of, does account planning need to live in agencies in order to get the most effective creative work or compelling communications from creative teams?
I mean, I would love to think that there should always be planners inside agencies. And I don't think I've ever been or worked with an agency that didn't want to have that kind of strategic insight accessible, if not in-house. And I think that's because, look, we've been in a commoditized market for, kind of marketplace for in terms of marketing, for a long time now. It's not very typical that there's leaps and bounds in the kind of standard consumer realm, certainly in technology. But in the rest of the stuff, that people are buying every day or every week, not so much. So, I think most clients feel like we keep getting the same data, we're not getting any new insight, so when it's time to revise the creative or tweak the brand identity or line extend or whatever it is, I think everybody has that pain of like, okay, we've done the tracker, we've been doing the tracker forever. It's still not giving us any obvious path, so the need is real, and where it gets, delivered, I think is more a function of scale, client, nature of client, all those, and money, all those things, not to deflect it, with operational things, but
I think also good planners, I mean, sometimes a really good planner will help you identify the solve for your objectives, and it may have nothing to do with an ad campaign.
Yes.
There's three main phases of marketing, right? There's diagnosis, there's strategy, and there's tactics, right?
Yeah.
And if you have planning within your team, you already have somebody who can help you shepherd and partner with you on the diagnosis stage and ergo the strategy phase.
Yeah.
And that, I think, when looked through that lens, in a way, the planner mindset or strategist or whatever you want to call them can live in either side, as long as they're the voice at the table, helping steward that process of diagnosis.
And sometimes I think there's another piece of it, which is that planners, just because of the nature of their purview, which should be broad and curiosity based and, just kind of aware. I think sometimes planners can bring opportunity to the table. So not a classic diagnosis, there's a problem that needs to be fixed, but there is a current, there is a movement, there is whatever it is, and it is relevant to your brand. It's of importance right now to your consumer. And, how often do you get something like that offered to you on a plate? An easy connection, right? Because it's topical or it's powerful, whatever it happens to be. So I think that that's kind of a lucky strike extra.
It is a lucky strike extra. Well, it's that it's like that. Can you triangulate these three seemingly unconnected things and they mean something? Like that's kind of exciting.
And no one is tasked with that on the agency side. That is just if you're alert and you are unafraid as a planner, you take those things forward and say, hey, somebody needs to have a look at this because it could be, it could move us, right? It could move us forward. So I think, just having that kind of sensibility is really important, and that can live anywhere. But if you've got a planner on the inside, it just happens so much more quickly. And sometimes time is of the essence,
well, and maybe that's it. Maybe that when you have a planner, like I'm doing air quote planner, like whatever that person is, on the client side or outside the agency, in a way, they are probably better poised to affect objective setting or affect hopefully large initiatives that help move the brand forward.
Yeah.
I wonder, and I reflect on how much impact they directly have on creative work, though, because there's something to be said for being at a desk across from your creative director and bashing your heads together on something. And if you're not physically in that same space with them and working side by side, I worry that you really wouldn't have much impact on the creative.
It's so product. That's a really great point. And I'm just thinking in my own experience. So I would say maybe not fully half, but half of my career was spent inside big ad agencies and creative ad agencies. And then, a lot of time was spent on my own as a kind of single person, brand consultant, planner, and during that time, a lot of the people who were bringing me business were creative people that I'd worked with in the past. And so it goes back to that, I think we talked about trust. It goes back to that trust thing. And if you have that baseline of trust with a creative person, you have many of those conversations and they're fast, right? Because you're already kind of simpatico, you're in the same headspace, and they'll bounce they'll come to you and bounce ideas off of you, or say, I want to make sure I'm not leaving myself exposed with this creative idea. Is there any place that I need to tighten it or, consider something? And that's what you bring to it. It's kind of like polish and shining. I think planners do two things. They put you in the wheelhouse, which isn't the same thing as dictating a creative outcome. It's putting you in the right wheelhouse so you don't spin wheels chasing stuff that's not going to bear fruit, right? And then the other part is polishing and making sure it's tight. And is there a way to optimize a creative I hate to use that word optimize, but bump it up, make it tighter, make it better. And sometimes those are just really small detail things. And creatives can be, and I understand this, I understand the here's my baby, here's my baby mindset. But, sometimes, you with just a small tweak, something gets exponentially better.
It's true. And when I was at Turner Duckworth working with the designers over there, like that was one of the conversations that we always had during crits, which is, it's good. Could it be better? Like, just ask that simple question. Yes. Is what I have here, could this be better?
And I'm thinking, just as we're talking about this, because we have had conversations about qualities and making what makes a good planner, what can be taught. But I think, getting a handle on your ego, regardless of what your ego looks like, is a huge part of being a successful planner. You've got to somehow convey to the creative people that it's not an ego battle, and be earnest and kind of authentic about in a weird way. I think being a planner is like being 100% vulnerable all the time, because you have to show your authentic self for them to accept you. If they feel like you're competing in some way in the genius department, it gets very difficult. And I wish I had some really good advice as to how to present yourself so that those things get diminished and don't get in the way of a good relationship. But
well, but you saying like it's about feeling 100% vulnerable all the time. I would argue that for most creatives, that's like the constant state of existence, right?
I think that's why it's so tender, right? That's why it's such a difficult, well, it can be a difficult relationship to forge. It demands everybody be a little more vulnerable. It is a human business, right? So sometimes it worked beautifully there, and other times it didn't. And a lot of times that was an ego problem. And or there, so much of it is, what is the template of the ad agency and what is the power structure, and where is planning perceived in the organizational makeup or structure of the company. And if it sits more with if the creative director was the champion and sits more in that camp, that's a very different environment than you being seen as being in cahoots with the account executive or account service staff, that is way more charged, tasked with representing the client's point of view, and that could kill you, if you get perceived early as being one more client, directive toting, whatever, toady, that's problematic, and I think
that's kind of your death knell as the advocate of creative.
That's a delicate line to walk, because sometimes, I'm sure you found this, sometimes the client is dead right on something, and right to be concerned about something, and or maybe the concern is valid, but the way they want it fixed is not. I think that's pretty familiar ground for a lot of planners, and so walking those lines and finding a deft way to show that you are appreciating everybody's position and working to solve for the common good is, the common good being a good product, something the agency can be proud of, and not.
I don't know if this is connected somehow, but I always describe myself as somebody who never really survived agency politics. And I wonder if what you just described is maybe part of the answer to why I never really did very well when I swam in those pools, because I couldn't navigate the politics and the court of Versailles sort of experience as I was having, because in a way I just wanted to do the work and be able to be vulnerable. And when I was in situations where I felt pressure to play politics or in that case, be something that I wasn't, it was hard. It was really, really hard to put the emotional and mental energy around that. And I think to build the trust with your teams, and especially with your creative team and director, you have to, I don't know. I don't even know how to untangle or describe my experience.
I would describe myself as having been moderately successful. I didn't have the real killer instinct, to play politics in a certain way at certain times. But, I think I decided pretty early on in my career, and I don't even know how conscious it was, but I think I did make a decision about, I am going to be the truth teller. And, the art for me was, how to deliver the truth in a way that
people would receive it.
Everything is the decision tree. We can go down this path, and I'm going to tell you, this is what's going to happen. And this is why I think it's going to happen like that. Or we can go down this path, and I think it's going to play out like this. And this is why, and this is what I think we want. Yes, no, then we need to go this way. If we go this other way, which maybe they, creative person prefers or whatever, I said, I think this is going to be how it plays out, so let's think about how we're going to conduct ourselves if that plays out like that, and whether we're going to get what we want and what that's going to do to the timeline and blah, So I think I always tried, and I wasn't always successful, to frame every decision like a collective decision. Here's what it's going to mean for me. Here's what it's going to mean for you. Do you want it? Yes, no, and to be less attached to an outcome, which seems kind of counterintuitive because I'm talking about intentionality, but now I'm talking about being a strategist within the process, not just with the consumer.
There's a little bit of letting go, right? Like,
yeah, you have to let go.
You can't be attached to the outcome.
Yeah.
Like you can't even be attached to a campaign concept.
Yeah.
Right. And I think I like that idea of making a decision tree and mapping out, okay, let's look 4 steps, 5 steps ahead on what the possible impact is if you do A versus B versus C.
Yeah. I also think that de-emotionalizes disagreement with creative people, or it could be account service people, depending on, what's at stake and what's on the table. But, to kind of step away and be like, this isn't not about me. This is just like, which way do we want to go? And here's what I think. And if you've done your prep and your circumspect thinking about all of that stuff, your concern for your colleagues gets demonstrated in that kind of exchange. Even if you're not highlighting it, it gets demonstrated. It's sort of like, oh, this person is actually thinking about, what's going to happen, not just who's going to win or, who's going to feel happy after the meeting, but what's going to happen. And that is a trust builder, So I think being a truth teller is your power as an account planner, a strategic planner.
I like that. Okay, so let's talk about some advice to our viewers here who want to either be the planner on their team or bring more of this planner lens, this planner practice into their team. One of them, I think there's three points we can dive into each one. So one is to be that generalist, be somebody who has a cross-disciplinary background or at least mentality or interest.
I think part and parcel to that is you don't have to be the person who consumes everything, but you do have to have some discernment about where you're going to go to get a beat on stuff, right? And developing that pretty quick is important, so now we do everything online. There's a million places, but you don't need to waste your time overbuilding your repertoire of knowledge, but you do have to identify the places that can give you a quick
well, it is. And I think being a generalist and being able to get that quick read on stuff, the more you do it, the more you can create meaningful connections between disparate things quickly. Yeah. Like it's literally like a muscle. You just have to keep building and building and building. But when you have it, it can be powerful because creative, new, innovative, whether it's innovation, whether it's a creative product, if you can create connections between two seemingly unconnected things, that's where interesting things happen.
Exactly.
The second point is you need to know your business and know how advertising works. And I would add to that, you need to like creative product. You need to really truly enjoy that.
I think you need to like creative product. I think you also have to have empathy for the operational constraint of your clients. I think you can nuke a good relationship faster than, you can blink by being condescending to clients who are struggling just to get the work done, and I think we live in a time where, the timelines of everything are insane and people are doing the jobs of 3 people. You know what I mean? And I just think trust building on both sides of the fence is part of understanding the business.
I love that. That's really, really important. Could not agree with that more. The third point is, well, you mentioned the word empathy, but it's having empathy for your audience or your customer, right? But it's that being able to accept and trust and listen to the experience of others, people other than us.
Maybe people I don't even like or respect, right? It's like that sometimes, and you can't pass up a great opportunity because you feel disdain.
Let's talk about that though for a second. Why is empathy a strategic trait? Why is it actually something we should cultivate in ourselves for better marketing or better creative work?
I think it's a strategic superpower. And I think that because if you can get people to open up, I mean, talking consumers now, or people, humans, to open up and show you their messy inside. And by messy, I'm talking about the tensions we all live within, and by tension, I mean, I want to, let's talk about young moms. I want to be the best mom I can be, and I wish I could get away from my kids, right? Those are like two completely opposing viewpoints, completely legitimate, and they live together alongside each other in that
Exactly.
single person. And in tension, there is the best humor. In tension, there is the ability to convey deep understanding and connection. How all that plays out in a creative execution, well, that's up to the creative people. But when a consumer, I hate that word, but I'm going to use it. When a consumer recognizes that you have seen something in them that is so, just innate, right? Or vulnerable, they give you props for that. You've taken the time to understand them. You've had the compassion to either elevate what you've seen or, praise it or make good comedy of it, so they notice it.
Sometimes I feel that, I mean, I recognize, like, I work in a field that is a purely commercial pursuit, right?
Mhm.
But many times I have been told by people who have been in a focus group with me or an interview that they felt like it was a therapy session.
Oh yeah, me too.
And that, while that isn't really my intention, I'm always really happy to hear that, because I think one of the biggest gifts you can give somebody is the knowledge that they've been listened to and heard.
Yeah.
And we don't I feel, in our current climate, like, we don't always have that feeling. And so the fact that I can sometimes make somebody feel like they were heard,
Yeah.
that makes me so happy.
I think, it's kind of what I was getting at a few minutes ago when I was talking about understanding the operational life of a client. If people feel seen and heard, that is just, and the same is true for a creative person. If they sense that the planner understands their plight, whatever it is, that is a bonding thing, right? And this is the human relationship business, right? Whether we're bonding with our target or we're bonding with our colleagues or we're trying to establish new trust with a client. When we show that we see them, it's a big deal. And that's true of just regular relationships. To be seen and heard is a huge thing. And because none of us feel that right now, we're so fragmented, and I think this is a problem with advertising now too. Everything is so fragmented. We're talking about, a central role in an advertising process, when the reality is it's just kind of like the Wild West again. Even though we feel like we're making inroads with accountability and analytics and blah, 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 back end stuff, it's kind of Wild Westy.
If I were to ask you, what are one of the practices that you saw early in planning that don't exist anymore, that you're glad it's gone?
I had a British boss who grew up in that London time of knowledge and wisdom. And oh my God, like, we overproduced presentations with friggin' reams and reams of data, and clients would be falling asleep. And, it was a time when advertising had to prove its worth. And the way they proved the worth was with reams of data. So, the reams of data era is over, and I remember kind of hitting the, once computers were really throughout offices, advertising offices, and we were doing a lot more PowerPoint. I mean, that just wiped that time out, and thank God,
Microsoft.
because it was a bear. It was a bear.
Do you remember coding your qualitative data by taking clippings out of the transcript and pasting them everywhere?
God. Oh my God, the volume.
The flip question to that: what are some of the practices that you've seen emerging in planning, if you will? I'm doing a lot of air quote planning stuff today, that we didn't have early on in your planning career that you're actually really, you think adds to the process or the output that you think is a good evolution?
I mean, I think the fact that we can do, stuff digitally is incredible. You still have to have a good, smart person using the tools, so I think the tools are crazy. In my company, we do digital ethnography where a person's running around their house with their phone and it's going into our study platform, and we're sorting collages, and we're doing all the stuff we used to do around the table in formal qual, and we still do formal qual, although COVID and stuff. But so the tools to me are amazing. That allows you to save time. It's more engaging for the participant. It is a coming together, in a way that within a platform that allows respondents to feel connected. So I think that's pretty cool.
I would add to that. I think that's also really cool because it allows us, the royal us, to speak to consumers in less populated areas. Like,
right.
I think there's been, at least in the US, I think there's been an emphasis on major metro areas and the coasts, right?
Yeah,
from a logistics standpoint for research, right?
Yeah.
But the fact that this digital platform allows us to get to anybody with a good internet connection, which granted, we don't have full coverage across the country yet. I hope that will happen.
Right.
But I think it's opened the doors for us to hear the voices of other people that we haven't really heard before.
Yeah, we've done a lot of stuff recently around COVID for various clients. And, it's been a pretty profound experience. I mean, it's still just a survey tool, but the kinds of conversations I've been having with people, and how I've been able to share out within the platform, what others are thinking with the rest of the group, it's just, so the timing of it and being opportune, I think is pretty incredible. I still feel like there are times or contexts where in-person qual is the best way, and oftentimes that's when you're sort of in a high flux state where you want to be able to look at lots of options and play, as opposed to being more locked down with stuff. But yeah, I think if you're sharp, the tools are really great. You can get further faster.
Well, Linda, I really enjoyed this conversation. Thanks for staying on a bit longer than I originally asked you to stay with me. But thanks for the time. And thank you everybody for joining us and watching our conversation. If you found this valuable, useful, interesting, please do share it with your friends or colleagues. Thanks for watching. Until next time.